students of the guitar, get your guitars and I'm talking to the students that are considered my practice partners. Get your guitars. Let's go ahead and practice part 3 of secondary dominance. And this time, what I just played on the guitar, those chords, I played some secondary dominance, and resolving on tonics, on some tonics, and then the last chord that I played, the last two chords that I played were the primary dominant 7th chord in the key of C major, and then resolving on C major 7. So if you have watched my recent videos on this subject, you should be familiar with the concept of using secondary dominance in the major keys. I know I have been using the C major scale as an example, but your job and our job is to transpose to other keys, so we can be familiar with this concept in all the major keys. So what I was we're going to practice together. What I was thinking about is that when we play secondary dominance in the key of C major, in the major keys, but in this example, in the key of C major, we know we have the primary dominant chord, the primary 7th dominant chord, which is built on the 5th degree of the scale, and in this case it's going to be G dominant 7th chord. And then because it is the primary dominant 7th chord in this scale, it's going to resolve on the 1 chord, which is the C major 7th, or you can C major 9, 6, 9, depending on your choice. But we also have 5 other dominant chords that we can use in the same key. So, but they are not primary dominant 7th chord. They are secondary dominant 7th chords, or primary dominant chords. They're not going to resolve on the 1 chord. They're going to resolve on other chords within the scale, and those chords have to be diatonic to the scale. What I mean by diatonic, those chords have to belong to this scale, not to another scale. That's what diatonic means. That means you got a major scale, you got a C major scale, or you play the scale, and you can build a chord on each note of the scale, and all those chords are diatonic to the scale because they belong to the scale. But if you bring another chord from another scale, let's say you bring another chord from C sharp major scale, and you bring it in your C major scale, more than likely this chord is not going to be diatonic to the major scale you're using, because it does not respect the rule of intervals between the notes in the major scale. In this example, in the C major scale. So let's as an example, if I bring, let's say I bring F sharp major to the C major scale. F sharp major, this chord is built on the note F sharp, but in the C major scale you don't have F sharp, you have a natural F. So the natural F is diatonic to the major scale, to the C major scale, because that's part of the C major scale, but F sharp is not. So F sharp is non-diatonic to the C major scale, but F sharp is diatonic to another scale, but not to another major scale, but not to C major scale. And so that's the reason why that's the reason why in the C major scale you got your primary dominant 7 chord, G dominant 7, which resolve on only one chord, which is a C major 7, and then you got the one dominant 7th, which is when I say one, that means the root of the scale. In this case, it's going to be C dominant 7th. So we know, if you have watched my previous videos on the subject, you know how to find what diatonic chord that C dominant 7th chord is going to resolve on. So we know it's going to resolve on the 4th degree of the C major scale, which is F major 7. Okay. So if you want to know, if you want to know the scale, if you want to play, let's say you want to improvise over the C dominant 7th chord, which resolve on the F major 7. You want to improvise. So you want to improvise over those two chords. In this case, you need to know the scale. You need to know how to play the scale, build on the C, the scale from which the the C dominant 7 chord comes, and if you play, you know that's we're talking about C dominant 7th chord, and we know that's the secondary dominant 7th chord in the C major scale. So we know it resolves on C major 7. I mean, no, it resolves on F major 7th. Okay, right there we know to improvise over C dominant 7th, we can play the F major scale. Okay? Because remember, the F major scale is the tonic on which the C 7th, the C dominant 7th chord is going to resolve. So if we play the if we play the F major scale, so all the way F to F octave, we also play the C dominant 7 scale. Okay, this is as you may already know, this is called modes. So in the F major scale, which is called the Ionian mode, and then when you play, and when you get to the note C in the scale, which is the 5th note, the 5th note is called the Mixolydian mode of the F major scale. So whenever you play an F major scale, which is a F Ionian scale, you also play a C dominant 7 scale. The C dominant 7 scale is the C dominant 7 chord. That's what I meant to say. So whenever you play C dominant 7th chord in the key of C, in the key of F major, the C dominant 7th chord is the Mixolydian mode. So to improvise over either chord, the C or the F, you can play the F major. You can choose notes from the F major scale at the same time from the C dominant 7th scale. The mode is actually a scale, okay, but they call it mode because it contains the notes in the scale. All the modes in the same scale have the same notes, except you start the scale. The only thing you do, you start playing the scale from a different note in the scale in all the way to the octave. I can give you an example. In the C major scale, for example, when you play the C major scale all the way to C, okay, so you're playing the Ionian mode. Then now if you go in, now you can skip the C and you start on D instead, and you play a D scale using the same intervals in the C major scale. There's no change in the intervals. You play a D, you play D to D, keeping the same structure in the scale. You can end up with a D minor scale, but the scale is called Lydian scale or Lydian mode. the D Dorian mode in the key of C major. When you go to E, now you skip C and D and you start your scale on E all the way to E. That's another minor scale. You're gonna play E. You're gonna play E minor, another E minor scale. That's the Phrygian mode of the C major scale. Now, when you start on the fourth note, which is F, you play F all the way to F octave. This is called the Lydian mode of the C major scale. Now you go to the fifth note. You can play G. You're gonna play G all the way to G. Same intervals, same distances between the notes, all the way to G. That's it. G Mixolydian mode. Now you skip all those. You start your scale on the 6th degree of the scale, which is A. It's going to be a minor scale. That's called Ionian mode. Now you skip all those 6 notes and you start your scale on the 7th note, which is the B, all the way to B. Now you play the Locrian mode in the C major scale. That's what it is. So that's the reason why when we play C dominant 7th in the key of C major, we're not supposed to have C dominant 7 in the key of C major. We're supposed to have a C major 7. But now we're playing C dominant 7 using C. So that's that's 1/7. We call it 1 dominant 7. Okay? It is secondary dominant 7th in the key of C major. But when we know what tonic is going to resolve on, we know that F is going to resolve an F major 7. In F major 7, for F major 7th, a C dominant 7 is the primary dominant 7th chord in the key of F. So see, it's we are trying to understand this concept together, okay? The C, when you play C dominant 7th in the key of C major scale, that's a secondary dominant chord because it's not resolving on the 1 chord, but it's going to resolve on another tonic within the scale that is diatonic the scale. And in the C major scale, we know C dominant 7th chord resolve on F major 7th chord. For F major 7th chord, okay, C dominant 7th is the primary dominant 7th chord in the key of F major. But in the key of C major, the same C dominant 7th is a secondary dominant 7th chord. Okay? If you think about it, okay? Let's say, okay, you in the key, okay, forget C major scale now. Let's say you in the key of F major scale. Okay? What is the number? What is the fifth note in this and what is the fifth note? Number 5 in the key of F major is the C. Okay, that means C in the key of F major, C dominant 7th chord in the key of F major is the primary dominant 7th chord of F in the key of F major. But in the key of C major, the primary dominant 7 chord is the chord built on the 5th degree of the C major with its G dominant 7th chord. Okay, that's why G in the key of C major, G dominant 7 chord, as the primary dominant 7 chord resolve on C major chord, the 1 chord. In the key of F major chord, the same C dominant 7 chord is the primary dominant chord in the key, in the key of F major, because in the key of F major, C is the 5th note of the scale. I think that's pretty clear. Okay? So if I want to improvise over the C dominant 7th chord, I need to make a decision which scale I want to use to improvise on. Is it F major? Which scale I want to use to improvise? Am I going to use the F major scale, where C dominant 7 is the primary dominant 7 chord, or am I going to improvise using the C major scale, where the same C dominant 7 chord is the secondary dominant 7 chord? Okay? I am going to say that I would rather use, in this case, that I have C dominant 7 chord resolving on the F major chord, on the F major 7 chord. I would use myself. I would choose to use the F major chord as my scale of improvisation. That's what I would use. Then maybe if you want to make things more interesting, if I want to make things more interesting, I would switch back and forth between the C major scale, where C dominant 7 is a secondary dominant chord, and F major scale, where the same C dominant 7 chord is the primary dominant 7 chord. I would switch back and forth to make the music more interesting. So usually I'm trying. I want to make the videos, shorter, but I think when you start explaining and try to discovering things you can do, it's not easy to do. So for that reason, I'm going to stop pretty soon. But what I want you to keep in mind now is when you play in the key, as an example, you can transpose, but as an example, when you play a dominant 7th chord, okay, on the tonic of the major scale, in this example, C major scale, instead of playing a C major 7 chord, you substitute with a C dominant 7 chord instead. Okay, when you do that, that C dominant 7 chord will resolve on the 4th degree of the major scale. In this case, of the C major scale, which is F major 7 chord. Okay. Okay, now if you want to play solo, you want to improvise, you can choose you can choose to use the F major scale. Okay, where where C dominant 7 chord is the primary C dominant 7 chord is the primary dominant 7 chord, or you can play you can improvise using the C major scale, where the same C dominant 7 chord is the primary dominant 7 chord, or you can like shuffle between the two. You can do the same thing that I just told you when you have okay, that was the first one I said was okay, C7. Actually I'm playing C dominant 7 9 13, okay, right here. And but I usually call it just a 9. I just call it C13, because when you say C13, that implies you already play 9, you already play 7. So if I say anytime you hear C13, even though in jazz it is good to spell out all the notes, stuff like that, but if you hear somebody say C13, you should immediately think of a dominant 7 chord, of a dominant chord. It's a dominant 7 chord. It's a dominant 7th chord that have been extended by the addition of 9 and 13. So if I say C13, you should assume that there's a 7 in it, there's a 9 in it, or a flat 7 something. Okay, so so you can do, like I say, I'm going to stop, but what I needed to do is go to the secondary dominant 7 chords that resolve on major chord, and we have 2 of them in the key of in the major key. In the key of C major, we have the C major 7 chord resolving on the F major 7, and we have the D dominant 7th chord, even though we know in the key of C major scale the second degree is a minor. The second degree is a minor chord. Well, I would say the chord built on the second degree is a minor chord. We know is D minor or D minor 7. But since we can substitute chords, we can play a D7th chord on the second degree instead of a minor chord. Okay, right here. I just play C dominant 7 13 or C13, but we know it's not going to resolve on the 1 chord because it's a secondary dominant chord. It's going to resolve on G major 7. Okay. All right. So it's the same thing. If you want to improvise now, playing your solo, is the same concept as for C7, C dominant 7 chord resolving on the F major 7 chord. Okay, that means the D, this D dominant 7 chord it is a secondary dominant 7 chord in the key of C major, but in the key of G major it is a primary dominant 7 chord. So when you improvise, you need to make a decision according to the nature of the music you're playing, which scale you're going to use to improvise. Is it this is it a C major scale or the G major scale? Because in the G major scale, D dominant 7th chord is the Mixolydian mode. Okay? So I'm going to stop with those two chords because I'm going to stop with those two chords because in the major scale, those two chords are the two major chords where secondary dominants resolve. Talking about the secondary dominant built on the 1 chord and the secondary dominant built on the 2nd degree of the scale. Let me say that again. The secondary dominant chord built on the 1st degree of the major scale, in this case C major scale, is a secondary dominant chord will resolve on the 4th degree of the chord, in this case F, and the dominant 7 chord and the dominant 7. All right, let me rephrase that. A secondary dominant chord built on the 1st degree of the major scale, here C major scale, resolves on the 4th degree of the same scale, C major scale. And a secondary dominant chord built on the 2nd degree of the C major scale will resolve on the 5th degree of the C major scale. And we call those chords where those two dominant 7 chords resolve, we call them tonics. Okay? In this case, it's going to be F major 7th and G major 7th. Okay? So then you can use the F major scale, or called Ionian Mode, or G major scale, also called Ionian Mode, to improvise. Or you can use the Mixolydian Mode, which is going to be C Mixolydian Mode, and C Mixolydian Mode, and to play Mixolydian Mode or Mixolydian scale, you got to start on the 5th degree of the scale. You got to start on note number 5 of the scale to play the Mixolydian Mode. And all you need to do, you just play the major scale, and then you flatten the 7th degree of the scale. I'm going to give an example, and then I'm going to stop. And then next time we meet, it's going to be, we're going to go over the dominant 7th chord that resolve on the secondary dominant 7th chord that resolve on minor chords, and learn the scales, the modes to use to improvise over them. Let's try together to see how we find our Mixolydian mode. How we play the Mixolydian mode, or how we play the dominant 7 scale, okay, which is in Mixolydian mode. For example, C. What we do, we play. Let's play the C major scale, okay? If you have your guitar, we start. I'm playing on a. I'm using third fret and 5th string, okay, going down. When I play a scale, what I do, I play the scale in section of 4 notes, okay. I play 4 notes, and I play another 4 notes. That's why I play my scales. So I call it tetra section of the major scale. I play 4 notes, and between those, and I play another 4 notes. Lower 4 notes, upper 4 notes. Lower tetra section, upper tetra section, and in between the two, I got a whole step. There are some cases in other scale that between the two you may have a half step. So, to give you an example, I'm gonna play C, D, E, F. So there's an identity of those 4 notes. There's an identity. That means those 4 notes, they are separated by intervals. The intervals can be a whole step. They can be the intervals can be whole steps. They can be half steps. But those 4 notes I'm talking about when I'm playing a major scale, they can be minor, they can be major, they can be diminished, and so on and so on. But right here in the major scale, the way you identify what type of section that you have, for what kind of tetra section that you have, and if you want, you can call it tetra chord, is where the half step is in that section. If the half step is between 3 and 4, so the tetra section, lower tetra section of the scale, is major. Okay, major. Now, if the half step is between 1 and 2, then it's going to be minor. Okay, so this is for another video what I'm talking about. But I am going to play 2 sections in the key of C major. Let me see. In the key of C major, we have the first section, C, D, E, F. That's major. That's a major tetra chord. Then from G, remember there's a whole step. Okay, F. That's a cutting point of the first tetra chord. Now I want to play the second tetra chord. So from F, I'm going to start the second tetra chord, beginning with starting on G. We got, okay, G, A, B, C. So where is the half note? The half note is between 3 and 4, because we're going to start. G is 1, okay, A 2, and B is 3, and you got C, which is 4. So the half step is between B and C. That's half. You know, that's for that reason we call that tetrachord a major tetrachord. The same thing for that's upper tetrachord. It's the same thing for the lower tetrachord. You got C, D, E, F. Between E and F, third and 4, you got a half step. Because the half step is between 3 and 4. Now we know we have a major tetrachord. So here's an example. C, D, E, F. That's a major tetrachord. Now I'm going to play the second tetrachord, starting with G. Okay? G, A. That's the second tetrachord. So it's like now to play the Mixolydian, to play a C7, to play a C dominant 7th chord, all you need to do is to flatten the 7th degree of the scale, which is B. B will become B flat. B will become B flat, and then you have your C. You have your C dominant 7th scale, which is also a Mixolydian scale in the key of F major. Okay, so here you go. C, D, E, F, G, A sharp, which is also B flat. Okay, that's your C dominant 7th scale. Okay. Alright, so next time is going to be secondary dominant 7th chord, resolving on minor chords and their scales or modes. Stay safe and see you later. Bye.